Elena Voss had lived her whole life believing she was ordinary. She worked the evening shift at a small diner outside town, drove a car that rattled at every red light, and kept mostly to herself. She liked it that way. Quiet, unnoticed, safe. She did not know that safety was an illusion her mother had built for her, brick by brick, for 18 years. It ended on a Tuesday night, at a gas station with flickering lights and an empty parking lot. She was filling her tank when she felt it, a strange pull in her chest, like a string tightening from somewhere far away. She looked up and saw him standing by the ice cooler, watching her with an intensity that made her stomach turn. He was tall, dressed in a dark coat despite the warm night, and his eyes held a color she had never seen on a person before, a deep amber that seemed to glow faintly under the gas station lights. "You smell like the moon," he said, as if that explained everything. Elena laughed nervously and reached for her car door. "Okay, that's a new one. Have a good night." He moved faster than she thought possible, appearing beside her car before she could open the door. Up close, she noticed things she had missed before. The way his shoulders held perfectly still, like a predator deciding whether to strike. The low hum of power radiating from him, invisible but undeniable. "My name is Damian Cross," he said. "I am the Alpha King of the Northern Packs. And you, Elena Voss, are the last living descendant of the Moon bloodline." She stared at him, waiting for the joke to land. It never did. "I don't know what that means," she said carefully, "and I don't care. Please move away from my car." "You are in danger," he said, ignoring her words. "There are others who would take you before I could protect you. By ancient law, you belong to the royal bloodline. I intend to mark you, to bind you to my pack, to keep you safe under my protection." Something in her chest twisted at those words. Not fear exactly, something sharper, something that felt like anger. "I don't belong to anyone," she said, her voice steady despite the pounding of her heart. "Not you, not some ancient law, not a bloodline I've never heard of. I said no." Damian blinked, as if the word itself was foreign to him. Kings did not hear no. Alphas did not hear no. And yet here she stood, a woman barely 5'6", refusing him without a single tremor in her voice. "You do not understand what you are," he said quietly. "Then explain it," she said. "But you are not touching me, you are not marking me. If you want my help understanding whatever this bloodline is, fine, but it happens on my terms." For a long moment, Damian said nothing. Then, slowly, he nodded. That single nod changed the course of both their lives. Over the following days, Elena learned pieces of a world she never knew existed. Werewolf kingdoms, hidden behind ordinary towns. Bloodlines that determined power, loyalty, and rank. And at the center of it all, an ancient royal line called Moonblood, thought extinct for centuries, until her mother, Elena discovered, had fled the packs decades ago to protect her unborn daughter. Damian moved her into the royal compound, a sprawling estate hidden deep in the forest, surrounded by guards who watched her with quiet suspicion. She was given a room, meals, protection, and clear boundaries. No mark, no bond, no ownership. She had made that clear from the first night, and to her surprise, Damian respected it, even as his jaw tightened every time she reminded him. He believed she would change her mind eventually. He believed the pull of the pack, the ancient instinct buried in her blood, would eventually overwhelm her resistance. He had seen it before, in others who arrived unaware of their heritage. Within days, sometimes hours, the pack's presence became irresistible, comforting, magnetic. Elena felt none of that. If anything, she felt more like herself with every passing day, more grounded, more certain of who she was and what she wanted. She trained with the pack's healers, who taught her about the strange energy simmering beneath her skin. She spent hours in the library, reading yellowed pages about a bloodline older than the kingdom itself. And slowly, without realizing it, she began to change something far greater than herself. It started small. A young sentry named Corin, barely 20 years old, abandoned his post one afternoon when Elena stumbled during a training session. He was supposed to be watching the Eastern Gate, a duty he had never once failed in 3 years of service. Yet something inside him turned toward her the moment she cried out, pulling him away from his post before his mind even registered the decision. Damien scolded him harshly that evening, demanding an explanation. Corin, confused and ashamed, could only say, "I don't know, my king. My body moved before I thought about it. It felt like she called me." Damien dismissed it as coincidence. A fluke, nothing more. But it happened again, and again. A week later, two enforcers who answered to no one but the king arrived outside Elena's door, before she had even called for help, moments after she cut her hand while chopping vegetables in the kitchen. They stood outside, unsure why they had come, only that something urgent had pulled them there. Elena noticed the pattern before anyone else did. She noticed the way wolves' eyes softened when she entered a room, the way their voices lowered instinctively, respectfully, as if speaking to someone far above their station. She noticed how even the oldest warriors, men who had served 3 generations of Alpha Kings, began glancing toward her during pack meetings, waiting for some unspoken signal. She confronted Damien about it one evening, in the quiet study where he spent most of his nights buried in old texts and reports. "Your wolves keep looking at me like I'm supposed to tell them something," she said, arms crossed. "Like I'm in charge. What is happening to me?" Damien set down his pen slowly, his expression unreadable. "I was hoping it was only my imagination," he admitted, "but it is not. Something in you is waking, something ancient." "Explain it properly this time," she said. "No riddles, no half-truths." He sighed, running a hand through his dark hair, an uncharacteristic gesture of exhaustion. "Centuries ago, the Moon bloodline ruled these packs, before my ancestors rose to power. The histories say the Moonblood rulers did not need to mark their wolves to command loyalty. Their voice alone carried authority, an authority so deep it bypassed instinct entirely. My bloodline built its power on marks, bonds, and blood oaths. Yours built its power on something far older, something wolves cannot resist, whether they wish to or not." Elena felt a chill settle over her skin. "Are you saying I'm some kind of queen? That my family used to rule before yours took over?" "I am saying," Damien said carefully, "that your bloodline is not dormant, as I once believed. It is the original royal line, the one my ancestors displaced generations ago, and it appears to be waking inside you, faster than anyone anticipated." Elena sat in silence, absorbing the weight of his words. She had come to this world unwillingly, dragged from an ordinary life into one she never asked for. And now she was being told that ordinary life had been a lie from the very beginning, that she carried something ancient and powerful inside her, something that could reshape the entire structure of a kingdom Damien had spent his life defending. "I don't want a throne," she said quietly. "I never asked for any of this." "I know," Damien said, his voice softer than she had ever heard it. "But some things are not chosen, they simply are." Over the following weeks, the changes grew undeniable. Wolves who had served the cross bloodline for generations began seeking Elena out, not out of rebellion against Damien, but out of a pull they could not explain or resist. She never asked for their loyalty. She never demanded anything from them, yet they came anyway, drawn by a voice inside them older than memory itself. Damien watched it happen, with a mixture of fascination and quiet dread. He had built his entire identity around being the undisputed ruler of the northern packs, the strongest alpha in 3 generations, and now, a woman who had refused his mark, refused his claim, refused everything he had offered her, was slowly becoming more powerful than he had ever been, without lifting a single finger to seize that power. He found himself, more than once, standing at the edge of the training field, watching her instruct a group of young wolves in techniques she had only just learned herself, and feeling something unfamiliar stir inside his chest. Not jealousy, though there was a shade of that too. Something closer to admiration, respect, and beneath it all, a quiet, stubborn hope that perhaps she might choose to stay, not because ancient law demanded it, but because she wanted to. Elena, for her part, struggled with the weight of what she was becoming. She had never wanted power. She had wanted a quiet life, a job, a home, a future free from ancient bloodlines and hidden kingdoms. But she could not deny what was happening around her, could not ignore the way wolves looked to her for guidance, comfort, and direction. One evening, exactly 1 month after Damien had first found her at that gas station, The entire royal court gathered in the compound's central courtyard for a ceremony marking the change of season, a tradition older than the kingdom itself. Elena stood near the back, uncertain of her place among the assembled nobles and warriors, still unwilling to claim a title she had never asked for. Then something shifted. One by one, without command, without instruction, the gathered wolves began turning toward her. First the young sentries, then the seasoned warriors, then the nobles who had spent decades serving the cross bloodline without question. They did not look to Damien, who stood at the head of the courtyard in his ceremonial robes. They looked past him, toward Elena, standing quietly at the edges of the crowd. And then, one by one, they knelt. Not out of fear, not out of command, but out of a recognition buried deep in their blood, a recognition that could not be explained through logic or law, only through something ancient and undeniable finally coming home. Elena stood frozen, her heart pounding, as the entire courtyard bent low before her, wolf after wolf lowering themselves to the ground in silent tribute. She looked toward Damien, searching his face for anger, for betrayal, for the fury she expected, after everything he had built being quietly, unknowingly, undone. Instead, she found something else entirely. He was watching her the way a man watches the sunrise after a long, dark night, with awe rather than resentment. He walked toward her slowly, the crowd parting before him, until he stood directly in front of her, close enough that she could see the flicker of emotion behind his amber eyes. "I built this throne believing strength alone earned loyalty," he said quietly, his voice carrying only to her. "I was wrong. Loyalty like this cannot be built. It can only be born, and it was born in you, long before either of us understood what that meant." "I never wanted this," Elena whispered, glancing at the kneeling crowd around them. "I know," Damien said, "and that is exactly why they follow you. Not because you demanded it, but because you never once tried to take it. You simply are what you are, and they recognize it, even when you do not." Elena felt tears gathering at the edges of her eyes, not from sadness, but from the overwhelming weight of finally understanding who she truly was. She had spent her whole life believing she was ordinary, hiding from a truth her mother had tried desperately to protect her from. And now, standing in the middle of a courtyard filled with kneeling wolves, she understood that ordinary had never been an option. It had only ever been a temporary disguise. "What happens now?" she asked quietly. Damien offered his hand, palm up, an invitation rather than a command. "Now," he said, "you decide what kind of ruler you wish to be. Not because ancient law demands it, not because a mark forces your hand, but because it is who you are, whether you accept it or not." Elena looked at his outstretched hand for a long moment, remembering the man who had cornered her at a gas station weeks ago, insisting she belonged to him by ancient right. That man was gone now, replaced by someone standing before her not as a king demanding a queen, but as an equal, offering a partnership built on respect rather than possession. Slowly, she placed her hand in his. The courtyard remained silent, wolves still kneeling in quiet reverence, as two bloodlines, once rivals across centuries, finally found their way toward something neither ancient law nor royal mark could have ever created on its own. Not ownership, not conquest, but a quiet, unshakable trust, built one choice at a time, between a king who had learned to listen and a woman who had never needed anyone's permission to become exactly who she was always meant to be.